Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
TikTok Cafe, located on Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie, is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our menu offers breakfast dishes like our Western omelet made from scratch biscuits, grits, egg sunny side up, and lunch specials like our homemade cheeseburgers with a side of golden brown fries. Don't forget about our weekday lunch special, and that every Tuesday is steak night. TikTok Cafe, open 24/7 at Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie.
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Hope that you've had a great time with friends and family. Push the turkey away and sit back for a great hour of sports talk as we talk about all the home teams. The Saints, the Pelicans, the Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave. We're going to talk a little Nichols and also Bayou Classic. To break it down for us tonight, two of my favorite guests. Les East, freelance reporter, also award-winning journalist, joins us on the program along with Corey Johnson of Sports 1280 and ABC 26 WGNO here in New Orleans. And gentlemen, welcome to the show. As always, thanks so much for being with us. Happy Thanksgiving to you both.
Thanks, Eric. Happy Thanksgiving to you, too. Thanks for having me back.
Always good to have you. And before we all get started, I was like, let the folks know a little bit about what you're involved in. Why don't you start us off, if you would, Les?
Thanks. I'm working with CrescentCitySports.com, which, of course, a lot of people will remember as SportsNola.com. We've rebranded here recently. And also working for NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, so staying busy with both of those entities. Saturday Down South, I write a few times a week about LSU on that website as well.
It's a great site, by the way.
Thanks. It really is good. They cover the SEC as thoroughly as anybody, and good to be a part of that. So staying busy with all those projects.
Well, thanks for coming down tonight. We appreciate it. My good friend Corey Johnson, welcome back. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me,
Happy Thanksgiving to you, as always. And tell us a little bit about what you're involved in.
Yep.
You know, that long list of things that you're doing on a day-in, day-out basis.
Yeah, well, not too long. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, Les. Good to see you, man.
Same to you.
Doing my talk radio show every Monday through Friday, Eric, 4 to 6 o'clock on AM 1280. Also on TV on Cox Channel 4, on Charter Channel 333, and doing some television editorials for Channel 26 a couple of times a week on their News with a Twist, and doing some legal work for Roy Moore and Al Franken this week. It's been very
Assisted by Les East.
Yes, exactly. We're busy.
It's more than a two-man job, I can tell you.
No doubt about it. Guys, look, it's been quite a few years when this show started to now. Hadn't been a lot of good things to talk about when you want to talk about the local teams when it comes to sports for the most part, especially on football weekends. It's been a great year so far. I mean, the Saints, LSU, Tulane, obviously Nichols going to the playoffs. We got, as mentioned, I got the Bayou Classic this weekend with again both teams, Southern and Grambling, vying for their division championship. A lot at stake there. And let's start off with the Saints. 34-31 winners in overtime over the Washington Redskins. They're now 8-2. They've won 8 in a row. the comeback, and you guys have seen a lot of Saints football like me, okay? I mean, we've been around since, Les and I, since seeing the first game, 67. Corey, can you remember the first games in 67?
No.
Yeah.
I was one years old.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Then.
But
no, early 70s, I guess, my first memories.
The team is playing very well, but last week was one of the greatest comebacks I've ever seen. And one of the when you talk about how the Saints performed from early to again turn this thing around late, going to be one of the games that goes down in history. And Les, I'll start with you first. You were there. Talk a little bit about the Saints overall, and then kind of get into that particular game, if you would.
Well, overall, I think we're seeing now the team a lot of us expected to see going into the season. Not necessarily 8-2. I don't know we expected them to be that good, but those first two games did not look like the team we expected to see. We all figured they'd be better than 7-9, maybe go to the playoffs. So the turnaround, I think, was something we expected. It's probably been more dramatic than we expected. The thing about Sunday's game is I kept going back and forth as they were making the comeback. And, of course, you think back to the Redskins game in 2009 because you had the comeback there. Yep. And a very similar score. A lot of crazy stuff happened in that game. But the more we got into it, I kept going back to the NFC Championship game in 2009 against Minnesota. You're looking the same area of the field. Brett Favre, at the end of a Hall of Fame career, inexplicably tries to throw the ball back against the grain into the defense, turns it over as they're in position to kick a field goal to win the game in regulation. Tracy Porter intercepts it. Same thing, Kirk Cousins steps back, throws the ball. Miscommunication with the sideline, as it turns out. They call grounding, push him back 5 yards. Apparently a bad call in the NFL's judgment after the fact. And then Saints' first possession of overtime, they line up, same end of the field where Garrett Hartley kicked him into the Super Bowl. And Sean Payton famously said, hit the fleeping fleur-de-lis. And they, of course, Will Lutz hits the field goal there, and they go in. So you look at those things, whether it's the Washington game in 2009 or the Minnesota game, the thing that strikes me is just special teams have things happen along the way that you can't really explain. Yeah. It's like they have an intangible that helps them out. Long way to go still, but at this point, not too many teams in the NFL have that kind of magical type of things happening to them. So it was a special day, and it says that this is a special team. Long way to January, but you got to be happy with where they are now.
Corey, overall, then your thoughts on that particular game?
That particular game was incredible because Washington came to play, and Washington's a decent team. Mm-hmm. They're not bad. Sure. They're not great, but they're not bad.
They're not injured.
They're not some 4-12 team, So they came. They were desperate for a win. Saints go out there, no A.J. Klein, no Vaccaro. So that's going to hurt them right away on defense. They're not too deep defensively. And then you lose Lattimore early in the game. He tries to come back in. The ankle doesn't let him play. You lose Okafor for the season now. That's 4 defensive starters. So Cousins, they were exploiting some things that were available, especially in the passing game. And they took advantage in a few situations there, including what Les was talking about, driving down the field, getting in field goal range before Cousins threw that maybe ill-advised pass out in the flat, which I thought was grounding. I don't know what the NFL's talking about. But just for the Saints to go down at that point, right before then, with Cousins throwing a score by 15 with 5:58 to go, I was shocked I didn't leave the Dome at that point. I mean, probably a 50-50 chance I wouldn't have been there to watch the game. But for some reason, we stuck around and got to watch the overtime and got to watch that great victory, which I'm telling you, I don't fault people for leaving. That game was over. You're down by 15. You're not doing anything consistently, offensively or defensively, the entire game. But Breeze goes in there and 85-yard drive, 82-yard drive, 11 for 11, 2 touchdowns, the 2-point conversion. I mean, Saints force the overtime and then stop DC and drive right down the field and kick the field goal on first down and win this thing. Just an unbelievable game. And like a lot of games this year, I mean, Green Bay, Detroit, don't play their best games, still winning on the road. They go in this game with DC. That game's over with. That's a loss. And they pull out a victory. And that was a special win. And overall, Eric, I mean, it's an unbelievable season. That 0-2 start, like Les was saying, in the preseason, they showed a pretty solid D. You thought the defense would be viable. Those first 2 ball games, you're like, my God, it's the defense of the entire Peyton era, especially the last 3 years. Sure. And then they've turned that around with a pretty solid group on defense. They've turned it around with a balanced offense where they run the ball a lot now. And Eric, I mean, my God, unless the last few years, you couldn't find a free agent or draft choice that was contributing. Now it's hard to not find one the last couple of seasons that's not contributing, and in a big way, like stars and starters. So an amazing turnaround. It's great to see Breeze hugging Peyton when they're running off the field. Peyton's got the fire like his first 5 years. Breeze is playing like he's 29, not 38 or 39. So, no, just an incredible Sunday in the Dome. And Saints are alive, man, but that NFC's tough.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Minnesota looks really good. Philadelphia's really good. Pittsburgh and New England are both really good. There's a bunch of teams like the Saints. But I don't think you can say there's any team that's just better than the Saints. Right. I think there's about 6 teams that are all about the same level.
Right. And the thing is, we talked about how the Saints are starting to look like the team we thought they would be, and maybe even better. It's the same is true as the NFC South.
Yes.
Atlanta has come a long way in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Carolina's straightened out a lot of things.
Atlanta
So we thought that might be the deepest division in the NFL, and I think after some inconsistency, it is the best division in the NFL.
And that's another thing. Saints are how great they're playing, and they're playing great football, like talking about their top 6 team in the league. No one's better. Carolina's 1 game back. Atlanta's 2 games back. I mean, it's ridiculous. The Saints could win the division and have a bye. The Saints could not make the playoffs. Atlanta could win the division and get the bye. I mean, it is wide open right now. So nice to be in the lead, but you don't take any of that for granted.
Yeah, I would agree with both you guys, and especially when you look at the division and you look at looking to try to get that first round bye
you need
as well.
And home field advantage,
no doubt,
ideally.
No doubt. And of course now, offensively, they've been able to overcome the injuries. They've got some really quality depth on that offensive line. That offensive line has really come through. Defensively, they showed a little chink in the armor last week with, again, as you mentioned, Vaccaro and Klein not playing, and then, of course, Lattimore going down, not sealing off that one side of the field, and then, which I think could be one of the devastating losses for this team, losing Okafor for the season with the Achilles tendon injury. Now you got to be able to have some guys that can fill in. Let's talk about Okafor first. Trey Hendrickson has played very well for this team. Again, he's kind of I think he's more of a Cam Jordan clone. He can play against the run. He can rush the passer. I think he's only going to get better the more he plays, the more he has time in the NFL. Al-Quadin Muhammad is a guy that they would not put on the practice squad because he was so disruptive in preseason.
Yeah, the team would scoop him up.
And he's been on the active roster, just hasn't been eligible to play on a Sunday. He'll be probably now on game day. He will be active, and of course, Haloi Kakaha coming off multiple knee surgeries. These are the 3 guys that are now going to have to man the spot Okafor has manned all season long. And I think that you can talk about Okafor's ability to rush the passer, and there's no doubt he has played very, very well in that aspect of the game and has helped the entire defensive line because there is pressure from the opposite side of Cam Jordan. But you can't underestimate his ability to tackle in the running game, making sure, again, that you're stringing plays out to the sideline. He has played very, very well this season. These guys are going to have a really big shoes to fill going forward.
No doubt about it, and that's a great point about him being a well-rounded player. I think a lot of us, when they signed him in free agency, were saying, well, they got to upgrade the pass rush. This guy is a pass rusher, and we may not have given him enough credit for being a first and second down guy as well. He's a complete player, so it's going to be difficult to replace him, but I think they can mitigate it. Hendrickson's played well. Kakaha as a pass rusher has definitely helped, and I think Muhammad can help there as well. So collectively, hopefully they can give you comparable production to what you got from Okafor. The one thing is, especially in Hendrickson's case, is this is a rookie who's played very well for a rookie, but he's put a lot of stuff on film now, so teams are going to start identifying him and saying, okay, what can we do against him that maybe previous opponents didn't worry about? And then, right now his college season would be ending.
Yes.
So you worry a little bit about stamina and strength going down the stretch. But because you do have two other guys, and of course you have to spell Cam Jordan on the other side occasionally, but those two other guys do give you some depth there. But you worry about how Hendrickson's going to hold up down the stretch being a rookie. But I think those three guys can help them get through this so that it's not a devastating loss. They got to get Lattimore back. He's he's as valuable as anybody on the team, including Drew Brees.
No, he is. He's an All-Pro this year, much less a Pro Bowl player. Right. He's having that good of a season. Yeah. And Eric, you not only lose your shutdown corner who isolates that quarter of the field, that third of the field, and is on the opposition's primary receiver every down. It's like it's a twofer. Because of that, the other 10 guys only have to worry about a much smaller percentage of the field. When Lattimore's not on the field, they have more responsibility because that guy's like a seasoned veteran, not like a rookie. So that's devastating. Okafor, it's kind of a double dip as well. You're losing this starter, like Les said, can rush the passer and stop the run, kind of underrated stopping the run. But now you have to go to this depth that you wanted as strictly backup guys, and they have to fill in as a starter role. So you're losing the backups, you're losing the depth, you're losing the guy who spells Cam Jordan for a play or two while he catches his breath. So that the Saints don't have a lot. They aren't a few years into this rebuilding. This is like year one. So there's not a lot of depth and a lot of elbow room where they can afford losses.
And then the loss of Lattimore, along with the loss of Okafor. Of course, Lattimore we hope will be back soon, as soon as this week, if possible. Again, his ability to tackle. He is a sure tackler.
Yep.
He helps in run support, and it allows you in a lot of cases, to be able to, as Corey just mentioned, to be able to leave one side of the field alone. Well, now you're in a situation where you may want to be able to blitz. You may be able to want to use a guy like Kenny Vaccaro or Bell or one of the other players to help put pressure on the passer. To do that, you're on an island. And if you're on an island, you want to have your best corners out there, and not having Lattimore out there compounds the problem of not having an Okafor, because now in order to try to maybe blitz to put pressure on the quarterback, you're wondering who's going to be able to cover on the back end. Again, Ken Crawley's done a nice job. P.J. Williams did a nice job in a little bit of time last week. Devontae Harris still has a long way to go. They signed Sterling Moore to bring him back, the veteran, which, again, he played very, very well for this team last year. It'll be interesting to see now how Dennis Allen kind of moves the pieces on the chessboard going forward to be able to get the kind of pressure he needs and also be able to stop the opposing team's passing game.
Well, and that leads right into something I was going to say. Assuming you have Lattimore back, and we're expecting him back before too long, we don't know about this week, but another thing he does with his one-on-one coverage ability is allow Dennis Allen to be creative. We've seen them play 5 defensive linemen. We've seen him use the linebackers in a variety of ways. You kind of wish he had Anzalone now, because he helps a lot with that.
Never lost.
Flexibility they had with the linebackers, but I think he's probably looking at some unconventional ways instead of just saying next man up and we just move everybody up one on the depth chart, seeing how he can maybe utilize his tackles or his linebackers or even an extra DB in certain matchups to try and replace Okafor that way. So I think they have a lot of creativity from Dennis Allen, and they have some players who allow him that flexibility. Right. So it's going to be interesting to see what packages he comes up with.
He just has less cards now. He had about 18 to choose from to make an 11. Now he's probably got 14 to make 11.
Right. And, of course, Klein's got to get back as well. Look, Michael Marty played his heart out the other day. Manti Te'o got a big play to be able to get that stop. But there's a reason why Klein is starting. There's a reason why he's out there, and they need him back. But then you look at Vaccaro and his ability to play multiple positions on the defense. That's also a big loss. And you're adding all these things together, and they kind of compound themselves going forward. So far, the Saints have they've had injuries, but they've been able to overcome them. This is a bigger hurdle now as you go into the last part of the season.
Allen's binder, every time there's an injury, he just rips pages out and throws them away. It stops what you can do.
And there's a lot to be learned, I think, over these next couple of weeks in terms of the defense and how they adjust to this. You can't just redo everything that you've been doing since July. So there are limitations to what Allen is going to be able to do. But A.J. Klein, you're right, they got to get him back. He's a strong side linebacker in the base. He's the inside linebacker in the nickel. So he's a guy who's really valuable in a lot of ways. But, I wrote last week that they had played so well on defense and run the ball so well that they hadn't really needed Drew Brees to be Drew Brees yet.
Exactly.
Last week they needed him to be Drew Brees, and he was as good as he's ever been.
And that's because that defense was so short. It was back to the old days.
But it's good to see that
he's capable of
that he can still do it. He can still be.
Did you guys doubt that, though? Because I didn't.
No,
I didn't doubt it, but until you see it, that they're not leaning on him as much, and then they're sitting there. And it hadn't been a good day because there was a pass rush on him, and the Redskins' coverage was outstanding.
Yes, it was.
So Drew hadn't had that big a game, not really his fault. And then all of a sudden, with 5:58 left in the game,
that was
the light goes
50%
on.
Of his stats right there.
And the light goes on, and he's as good as anybody has been, for that stretch of a game. So it's good to see that in the midst of a game like that, when he has to be as good as anybody can be, he can still flip on the switch like that.
But Corey, last time you were on, you brought back some memories of Saints teams of the past when we talked about the running game and Kamara and Ingram on how they've been performing. Talk a little bit about the, going back to, back when Hank Stram was the coach of this
Muncie
team.
and Galbraith, kind of thunder and lightning. It's amazing. It really is. And then you even have like a Strawn. You got these third and fourth guys that can do a little bit. But boy, Ingram's like pissed off. He's like, everybody talks about up at LSU, Geis is running angry. Ingram runs like, I don't get respect. I'm not respected like I should be in this league. I'm thought of as like a second tier back. I'm a primary guy, and I'm going to show you. So he runs sort of angry and mean and upset to me. And then Kamara is sort of the opposite, sort of this affable guy. He's a little different, inside, outside. The thing that shocks me the most about Kamara is how well he has done running in the middle, between the tackles. I didn't expect that at all out of him. He is viable as hell in that. And then he's so, diverse. You can throw it out in the flat, run him like a wide receiver, throw the little pitch like on the 2-point conversion, where he's just deadly out on left or right side of the field, where he's got to beat a man or two, and there's 5 yards in between him. That guy's going to lose that battle most of the time. But yeah, that thunder and lightning, dynamic 1-2 punch at running back is incredible, and it really suits this Sean Payton offense. You've got kind of your first and second down back in Ingram and your third down back in Kamara, traditionally speaking, but they play them together. They switch them around on different. Throw to Ingram out of the backfield now, too. So, maybe the best running back tandem in football right now.
Les, it's amazing about Ingram. He's not the same back as when he came out of Alabama. You got to give him a lot of credit for honing his game. Chris Ivory and others that were here that were physical backs, that were undrafted free agents in a lot of cases, that ran very angry, as Corey talked about. They ran like it was their last carry.
Yep.
And Ingram didn't run like that when he first got in the NFL, and he saw that from some of these journeymen. And then all of a sudden, he kind of took a page from their book. Those guys pushed him. He all of a sudden, he comes to LSU, comes from Alabama, and he's a guy that maybe wasn't a great blocking back for the quarterback. He's one of the better blockers they have now. Again, wasn't a patient runner. He's a patient runner now.
Yep.
Couldn't catch the ball at the backfield. He can catch the ball at the backfield now. He's made himself into a complete back.
Yeah, and absolutely. And he deserves a lot of credit because he was considered such a disappointment for those first couple of years.
Yes.
Because there were such high expectations because he was so good. In college, the Saints traded back into the first round, as I recall, to get him.
Yeah, they did. I think a New England trade.
It was, and that was pretty lucky.
So
that was the bounty. It was during the bounty, and of course they lost 2 number 2s instead of that number 1, which probably would have went to the NFL. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
The expectations were so high for him, and he was such a disappointment. A lot of guys, that might have been the end of their career. They couldn't handle the disappointment. To his credit, is he just got better and better every day in every facet of his game. And you rightfully brought up running angry. We used to hear about, it's angry Ingram today. Like last year, he got benched because of the fumbling. When Peyton put him back in there, he ran angry. it's angry Ingram all the time now, and that the overtime, those 2 carries were as good an example as I can think of.
When they signed him to that deal, which is really a good deal, now he makes $4 million a year. He's more like a $7, $8, $9 million a year back, I would say. Not in the teens, but more than he makes. When they signed him to that 4-year, $16 million deal, it was sort of like, all right, we'll sign him, and it worked out good because Ingram, I guess, didn't have a lot of leverage where he accepted just this okay deal. The Saints were kind of saying, like, all right, he's sort of second half of the NFL starters. I wouldn't put him in the top half, probably the second half. The positive side is he's a starter type. The negative side is maybe he's not some superstar, but we got him for a good deal, so going to re-sign him. It was sort of, I don't want to say an apathy towards it, but they weren't like fired up about it. I think the 4-year, $16 million deal, that it was a great deal, that's what got him fired up. And now he's really emerging as a back that deserves to get more money than that. So, yeah, and Ingram has a lot of pride, obviously, because he's playing really well. He's improved dramatically.
And you brought up how Kamara is so good between the tackles. He's not like Darren Sproles. No. He's a more complete back.
Totally.
And
probably better than Bush.
Yeah.
He's kind of like all 3 in 1. He's kind of like Pierre Thomas, Sproles, and Bush into one package.
And the thing is that plays right into Sean Payton's strengths because he's so creative as not only a play caller, but in using his personnel. And you brought up Pierre Thomas, who's the perfect example of how he doesn't care what your resume is or how you got here. So he trusts Kamara as a rookie as much as Ingram as a veteran because he's earned it. And so he can line up with Kamara on first down, first play of the game like he's done. He can bring Ingram in on third down. They're so interchangeable talent-wise, and Peyton is so skilled at interchanging them with his packages and his play calling that it's just a perfect fit. And you can see why Peyton left Knoxville last year after the private workouts with Tennessee, determined
to get
that he was going to get Alvin Kamara, and he made another trade to make sure he got him and he knew what he was doing.
A lot of offensive coordinators get talent and they are restricted, like you're playing within my offensive system. Peyton's system is so wide open. He implements plays. He comes up with things that, how do I maximize Kamara?
He had a vision for Kamara.
Exactly. And he has a vision with Ingram and on the wide receivers and maximizes their talent instead of let them play within my restricted system.
Guys, we can't glaze over this offensive line. Look, I think there were a lot of us out there when they selected Pete, they needed a defensive lineman. Ramczyk, they needed a player on the defensive side of the ball. You can't discount what these 2 young players have done. Pete's found a home at the guard position. Ramczyk has been incredible, moving from all over the line, finding his way where we thought he would ultimately be, which is at the right tackle position. You look at Armstead, although he's been often injured, when healthy, he's one of the best in the league. You can't understate that
playing really well.
You can't understate that Unger for Jimmy Graham trade. When you look at now how he has solidified the middle, and of course Larry Walford coming over from Detroit, playing under Joe Lombardi, understanding the Saints offense, and being able to slide right in hand in glove. This offensive line has played well, and then the backups like Senio Clemente coming in and playing multiples at Laribius, who's come in and played well. I mean, this offensive line, you want to talk about the MVP of this team thus far? It's the offensive line.
And the offensive line coach.
Amen.
You're not able to do those types of things if you aren't well coached, and not only in technique, but in getting guys to believe that they can move from position to position, get thrown into the fire unexpectedly, and be able to do it. And all of those guys, and especially you brought up Unger, certainly for holding the group together through all those transitions, that was huge. A lot of NFL observers who study film regularly have said Ryan Ramczyk is the best rookie offensive lineman in the NFL.
Nice.
And it's, he had a few bad plays on Sunday, and that's going to happen with a rookie. But overall, the way he has performed at a really difficult position for rookies to play and having to do it on both sides has been remarkable. And let's not overlook Teron Armstead, how he's been able to regain that high level of play immediately from his return. That's the big part of this team.
The O-line's been like the wide receivers to me, just sort of by committee, never like a strength. I'd say like above average is about as good as they've ever been. I don't care, Super Bowl year, whatever. I don't think you ever looked at the Saints and said, what a great offensive line. They never could, hey, we have to implement the run and we're going to run the ball for the rest of the game. They never could do that before. It's a different offensive line. Even going into this year, I mean, Ramczyk and Pete, I mean, it's a last year rookie, this year rookie. I wouldn't even count them in. So, I mean, to me, I'm like, offensive line's a concern. At best, it's going to be mediocre. And I'd say it's a 50-50 chance. It might be a little less than mediocre, and Breeze is going to have to compensate for that. Instead, it is a strength all of a sudden. I mean, they're really good on the offensive line, and proof is them being able to run block like they do. Run blocking's hard. Right. I'm not saying pass blocking is easy, but run blocking, you're proactively, you're attacking. Pass blocking, you're defending, you're sort of reactive. So it's a little different, and when you can do both, and the Saints can do both, now the offensive line might be the MVP of this team because at best they would have been mediocre, and they're a strength all of a sudden.
Well, there's a trickle-down effect. When you can do what this offensive line does in terms of keeping Breeze clean, only 9 sacks this year, I think, opening up the game, the running game, running when they want to run, running when they don't have to run.
No, and look at the Buffalo game, owning the time of possession, keeping the defense off the field. That's a the offensive line is the MVP, and your comment about trickle-down effect, it probably affects about a half dozen things in a positive way.
No doubt about
it.
It helps the receivers. It obviously helps Breeze. It helps the defense. I mean, everything, the whole 9 yards there. And let me say this. Everybody talked about the Dallas Cowboy line being the best line in football, okay? Look at the Dallas Cowboy line this year with some injuries that they've had and the dip that they've taken. Look at the Saints, how they've had to interchange their linemen all year long. Saints have the best offensive line in football right now. And I don't think I'm talking out of school to say that today.
Well, no, I agree. And I don't think you can win a Super Bowl unless you have one of, say, 5 best offensive lines in the league. Because like you said, it affects so many different things. If you're not elite on the offensive line, it's almost impossible to win a Super Bowl. The Saints look like they're elite on the offensive line. The 2009 offensive line maybe didn't have a lot of individual big names, but that collectively, that group had an outstanding year in 2009. And I would say that the way they ran the ball between the tackles at Buffalo might have been the single most impressive thing this team has done this year.
A couple more questions on the Saints, and we're going to take a break. Under the radar signing this week, Jeff Ireland re-signs with the New Orleans Saints. He has done wonders in terms of college scouting, helping as the assistant general manager. I'm sure he's got his hands in a lot of things we don't know about. He was going to be a hot commodity on the market at the end of this season. They get to keep him around.
Yeah, it's a great point. He obviously has made a big difference. This draft, we've talked for a few years now about how bad these drafts have been.
And free agency.
And this has been a good year in free agency. This draft, usually can't tell a lot about a draft halfway through one year. This year, we're already saying this is the best one since 2006. And I think that's without question. Sean Payton talked about this, I believe it was on Monday of this week, just about how Ireland has done such a great job of whittling down the numbers on draft day and bringing some clarity to who they're really most interested in. And getting, he didn't use this term, but I'll use it, getting a lot of noise out of the way and just zeroing in on the players they believed in and what their needs were and how those fit together. He's obviously done a great job, and keeping him off the market was huge.
Now I'm assuming he's getting like general manager salary.
Well, they've never been shy in paying the people out on Airline Drive. That's one thing you can say about Tom Benson. Whether it's players, front office, coaches, he's always opened up the wallet.
Allen's the one you got to worry about now.
Right. And look, well, you know, does he? When you got a good thing going, obviously everybody wants to be a head coach. For him, I think it's got to be the right fit. If I'm Allen, I don't just jump at a job. I jump at the right job.
Done that.
Right, with the Raiders.
He didn't have a great experience in Oakland. Right. So I think he probably feels more comfortable with his league-wide reputation now than maybe he did as a younger coach, and so he can be a lot more selective in the next one.
Final question on the Saints, guys. I said on this show last week, I'm drinking the black and gold Kool-Aid. I believe this is a team that can go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. Now, a lot can happen between now and then with a very tough schedule. It's a week-to-week league. You know, injuries can debilitate a team. There's no doubt about that. But the way this team looks right now, they look like a Super Bowl contender. You buying in?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of quick points. You know, in January, you got to be able to play outdoors. And they proved in Buffalo, even though it wasn't quite January conditions, they proved they can run and play defense. So they can play in January weather outdoors if they have to. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, a dome team doesn't want to go into Philadelphia, Minnesota late in the year. Well, there's not a team in the NFL that wants to come into the Superdome in January.
You're right. That's right.
And the other thing is you look at Minnesota and Philadelphia and even the Rams, Falcons are different, Panthers are a little bit different. But those three teams, you look at them, and to me, the big difference is the Saints have a Hall of Fame quarterback who's won a Super Bowl.
Yep, that is key.
And, you know, to me, that's a bigger difference maker than home field if the Saints don't wind up being a 1 or 2 seed.
They're a Super Bowl contender, Eric. They're as good as New England, Pittsburgh, like we mentioned before, you know, the Vikings, Philly. The problem is, like I was saying, no one's better than the Saints. But the Saints aren't better than anyone else either. Like the Saints are as good as those teams. They're not better. So I don't have confidence the Saints can go into Philly and win. I would think Philly would win. But also I have confidence, like Les is saying, no one wants to come into the Dome in January. So Saints would be favored against Philly in the Dome. So staying ahead, obviously, winning the South Division. Ideally, Philly stumbles, Minnesota stumbles, and somehow you can be a 1 or 2 seed and have that, you know, bye and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. That's key. I mean, go back to the Super Bowl season. You're playing at Minnesota, you lose that game most likely. Sure. It's an overtime game in the Dome, you know? So home field advantage is key. I mean, would I say the Saints can win the Super Bowl this year? No, I'd probably bet against that happening. But I'm betting against the Saints with 31 other teams. So are they a contender, to answer that question, Eric? They're definitely a contender. Some things, you know, have to bounce their way for them to get to Super Bowl victory.
So far they have.
God, Sunday said it all.
So far they have.
My God, yep.
Happy Thanksgiving. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Corey Johnson of Sports 1280, Les East, award-winning journalist with NOLA.com and CrestCitySports.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Quick break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhardt's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or amcofencecompany.com.
Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you're having a wonderful evening with friends and family. I'm your host, Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Corey Johnson and Les East are our guests tonight. Guys, before we move on to LSU, Tulane, and hopefully we'll get to the Pelicans tonight, congratulations to Nicholls State. Nicholls for making the FCS playoffs. They're 8-3. They're 7-2 in the Southland Conference. They're in the playoffs for the first time since 2005. They'll play South Dakota, which is 7-4 at home. First time they're going to have a game, a playoff game they'll host. That's going to be Saturday afternoon. Les, your thoughts on Nicholls? They've come a long way, man.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because it's easy to overlook them with bigger schools in the state and, you know, higher levels of football, but nonetheless they've done a great job. Really, the best way I can sum it up is that anyone who's followed Tim Rebo's career as a coach is not surprised that he's gotten Nicholls State to this point and might well get them to a higher level this year or at some point in the future. I think he's a really good football coach. He's obviously done a great job getting them back to the playoffs.
A lot of Louisiana kids on that team, too.
Now, I guess the key is 4K at QB, right? The Rummel kid. He had a Maryland scholarship. And I remember calling John Forkade. I texted him like, hey, John, send your nephew to Maryland, okay? Don't send him to Nicholls or McNeese or La Tech. Send him to Maryland. And I believe they, for the quarterback's brother or there's a relative that has a health issue, so he wanted to stay close to home.
Right.
Okay. So he stayed close to home, and right away he's playing like Georgia and, as a true freshman and stuff like that right away. Big nationally televised games. And, no, he's led this team, and he's a true freshman quarterback. So that's, I think, the big difference for this team. Probably without him, they're probably not in the playoffs.
Right. Bayou Classic, 44th edition, with a lot on the line this weekend.
Yeah, there is, and it seems like it's always that way now that both programs have come through some bumps in the road they had several years back. But, Grambling's undefeated. Southern has one loss, their annual loss to Alcorn State, I believe. But, with the tiebreaker, if Southern beats Grambling, they win the West and go to the championship game. If Grambling wins, of course, they're undefeated. They win the West and go to the SWAC championship game. So it's stakes couldn't be any higher. It's just like last year, except I think they were both undefeated last year, if I'm not mistaken, going into the game. So the West Division Championship on the line, two good programs, two good coaching staffs with Broderick Fobbs and Dawson Odoms. And I've said this before, there is not a crowd I have ever seen at a sporting event that has more fun than a Bayou Classic crowd. So I'll be there Saturday looking forward to it.
And if you have 19 hours for the game, it's an incredible experience.
Don't walk out on the halftime show.
No,
it's like a 4.5 hour thing with the Battle of the Bands and everything. No, Grambling was like, left for dead a few years ago. I mean, as bad a college football program, I think a few years ago, like Curtis or Evangel or my De La Salle this year could give Grambling a run for their money a few years ago, literally. The football program was on the brink of not existing. And now they win a black national championship in like a 2 or 3 year turnaround. I know it's not Division I, but I don't care what level it is. That is an incredible turnaround up at Grambling, incredible.
Speaking of a turnaround, the Green Wave looked like they were left for dead. And all of a sudden now they've won 2 in a row. Huge win, 20-17 in overtime. 2017 against Houston. You covered that game, and I watched that game, and I'm gonna tell you right now, first of all, Jonathan Banks is just an incredible quarterback. Ankale doesn't get the accolades he should get. Hilliard, I think, will be an NFL back. The defense has some players on there that are going to play on Sunday, like Parry Nickerson. This is all of a sudden now. SMU doesn't look like a big hurdle to overcome. They've lost 3 in a row. They get this one this weekend against SMU. They're bowl eligible.
Yeah, and I watched some of the SMU-Memphis game on TV before I went over to Ullman last week, and SMU plays absolutely no defense. And Memphis is a great offense, but they played no defense whatsoever. So Tulane has a chance in that game. I don't think SMU has a lot to play for. They're going to go to a bowl. It's not going to be a great bowl. They have no real
they're 6-5. They're already locked in.
Yeah, so they don't have a whole lot of
When
incentive.
they were 6-2, 3 losses ago, they were looking at something big. But now that they've lost 3 in a row, it's just But they probably want to end the losing streak.
Yeah, but the thing that impressed me about Tulane on Saturday is they had a good plan, and I think Willie Fritz is a good coach with a good staff. They had a good plan. They went out there. They got a nice lead at halftime, and they had the game kind of in hand, and then Houston turned it up a notch in the second half, took the lead midway through the fourth quarter, and you just kind of got that feeling like, well, they gave it a nice go, but the more talented team finally woke up, and they took control.
The team that's used to winning, going to bowls.
And in a matter of 2 or 3 plays, Tulane went right down the field, scored the touchdown, got a defensive stand, and won the game. The way they reacted to losing the lead was the most important thing about that performance.
Yeah, it was. That could have been the ball game, Eric. I think an old Tulane team, it would have been the ball game. The overtime win the week earlier against Cincinnati was big, kept them alive at 4-6. Now they're at 5-6. So Saturday morning in Dallas, they take on SMU. I mean, I think SMU's got a lot to play for just because they want to end the losing streak, and 7-5 sounds better and maybe a better bowl or whatever. But Les is right. SMU's already locked into a bowl. Tulane wins, they go to a bowl. It would just be really nice. They've already one win more than last year, so already an improvement. But these players are buying into Willie Fritz, Eric. I think they get a few more recruiting classes. Sky's the limit. It would be nice to beat SMU and get into a bowl this year and start that process.
Well, absolutely. Look, they were left for dead. Go to East Carolina and you win on a place you've never really won before. And then you come back and you beat a Houston team that is a legit team. I mean, and look, the way you had to come back, they got a dynamic. That quarterback for Houston is a dynamic player. Yep. And the way they were able to come back and win that game. You got to tip your hat to the seniors. You got to tip your hat to again the playmakers. That's one thing we've seen. When Curtis Johnson was the coach there, they had playmakers on the offensive side of the ball, and he built a pretty good defense when you look at what's left there. Yeah. Now Willie Fritz has to be able to add to that, and again, we're hoping that Tulane can get this next one, and that those that are setting up these bowls will look at Tulane. And give them an opportunity, because the one thing that they want with a bowl game is they want programs that travel. Tulane doesn't travel well, right. and I'm hoping that's not going to be an impediment to them getting into a bowl.
Well, that's the thing. We got to see how these games play out over the next few days, because they get bowl eligible. Yes. If they win, there's a pretty good chance you're going to have more bowl eligible teams than you have bowl spots, right. And then they're competing to be chosen, and like you said, that they're not going to be the most attractive team to a potential bowl, but it doesn't mean they won't get in, and you get a couple of upsets and they'll mathematically get in.
Yep.
LSU 30, Tennessee 10. Tigers are now 8-3, 5-2 in the SEC West. There is a real possibility that they beat Texas A&M on Saturday, and Auburn loses in the Iron Bowl. They're second in the SEC West. They're third overall in the SEC. And when you think back on where they were after the Troy loss, there's no way anybody would have thought they've come that far. Reports out of College Station is that Kevin Sumlin will be fired after the LSU game. Again, you don't know how Texas A&M is going to come in. Are they going to be flat because they're losing their coach? Are they going to try to play for them? But guys, this game against Tennessee, they overcame the elements to be able to, again, beat a Tennessee team that's down, but nevertheless a win they had to get.
Yeah, and what impressed me about that win is you look at the game, they threw for less than 100 yards. The game was fairly close for a while against a bad team. And so it doesn't jump out at you as a great performance. But what impressed me about that performance is Ed Orgeron and his staff didn't overthink it. So we got better players. This is a team that's got a very fragile psyche. They'll be fired up for the interim coach early on, but as soon as they get down, you don't know. The weather was a big issue. Let's not make this complicated. We're going to run the ball, give it to Darius Geis, give it to Darrell Williams, turn our defense loose, win a war of attrition, and they did exactly that. It wasn't real pretty to watch, but it was very smart by Orgeron.
And I agree with you. They came out with an option look. Danny Etling rushed the ball 9 times for 42 yards and a touchdown. This is a guy with a bad back, okay, from the week before where they didn't know whether he was going to play or not. Right. And I was a little miffed, and I went on social media early and said, man, what are they doing? Why is Etling running the football? Well, the reason why was they anticipated the weather. They knew the wind, so they were going to try to do it on the ground. And of course, it's the quarterback's choice and the option on whether he's going to take the ball or he's going to hand off to the running back. I would have liked to see him giving it to the playmakers. He wasn't doing that. But you got to at least say that, again, Canada had a plan going into Tennessee, understanding the elements.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I think Etling was saying before the ball game, he's throwing the ball, and it's like going 5 yards in the other direction. It was pretty insane. You saw that one time, and it was like a U.S. Open with fast screens. One time they had the ball down, and it starts rolling down the line, like literally 10 feet. And they had to pick it up and move it back to where the center would grab it and snap the ball. The refs had to. So crazy windy conditions. That monsoon that blew in for about 10 or 15 minutes. Obviously, the Doppler, they knew the weather situation, because I'm going, why are they even playing the game right now? But the announcers were like, in 5 minutes, this will be gone.
Right. Plus, there was no lightning.
Right, and no lightning at all. But you got to give Orgeron credit. I mean, really good coaching right now. Like Les said, not overthinking it, which can happen. Just get down to the fundamentals. You're better than them, talent to talent. Run the ball and play defense, and that's what they did.
Well, they played defense. The Vols rushed 38 times for 34 yards.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, that's strong defense.
Aranda's really good, and Aranda makes adjustments like it's nobody's business. Right. He's just a ridiculously sound coach.
And Kelly's a really good running back.
They ran 34 times for 38 yards. Pardon me. Okay.
And Kelly's a really good running back.
No, he is.
For Tennessee's problems, that may be the best player on the team, and he wasn't a factor.
No,
and of course, Connor Culp struggled again. I don't know if if you can really put that on him, considering the conditions there. That was very difficult to kick in, but he's got to get it together.
Yeah, it's all between the ears.
It really is at this point.
Really
and look, especially down the stretch here, against A&M and then into a bowl game, you're going to need your kicker to be solid.
And
hopefully he'll be able to come through.
Apparently they're going to give Gonsolin another look this week.
As he deserves to be, right?
Yeah, I think he deserves another shot. They've been bouncing back and forth all year because neither one has taken the job and held on to it like Culp looked like he was going to do before the Arkansas game. So that'll be something that'll I'm sure he'll throw it open for a competition leading up to the bowl game.
Guys, if there's one maybe drawback from the defensive side of the ball that we've seen this year that it really is not up to standard, it's the secondary. They've struggled at times in the secondary.
Yeah, and they talked about having some breakdowns against Tennessee. Corey Raymond was not happy with the way the secondary played. Tennessee, fortunately for LSU, didn't really have the playmakers to exploit that. They've made some big plays. Greedy Williams has the 4 interceptions, and so that really jumps out at you. And Dante Jackson is an impressive player. So
was he saying I'm number one the other day? Was that what he was saying? I'm number one.
I think that's
he
exactly
got
what he
for
said.
that as well.
Yeah.
It hasn't been the best year, but they've had so many injuries up front that have affected their ability to pressure the passer. And I think you've seen glimpses when Key has been healthy, when Lawrence has been healthy, and the line's been playing well. You've seen the secondary play well.
Better,
so I think that's sort of a hand-in-hand
thing. Do you think we'll see Key again this year?
I think so. I think so. Now, the thing that Arden Key could never play another down, and he's going to be like a top 15 pick in the draft.
Well, that's the thing. Does he do like Leonard Fournette?
Right. Yep.
Right.
This is a second injury. It's a knee injury.
That's my point.
And there's only 2 games left. I'm sure there are a lot of voices talking to him saying there's no point in you playing in these last 2 games. There are good reasons to play in these last 2 games, but there are a lot of good reasons not to, and I think he's probably getting a lot of advice. Like, don't push it.
I think if he plays, it's like a benefit to probably some NFL teams. They're like the kid's in it, and but also I think what Les is saying, he doesn't play, it doesn't hurt him.
Right.
No one's going, why aren't you playing?
It's all about the combine in a lot of cases now.
Sure.
And he's proven this year, once he came back from the injury, he can still be an effective pass rusher once he lost the weight. I don't think we see him again. I really don't. I don't think
if he hadn't had that 3 or 4 game stretch where he looked like he did last year, I think he would be more likely to play to try and put something on film. But people can see now, like, okay,
his
once he got over the
complete.
shoulder and lost the weight, he's the same guy.
Yep.
Guys, let's shift to the Pelicans, and again, so inconsistent. I mean, you want them to do well, and you look at the lineup and you say it's a flawed lineup, but, defense is about effort. And they gave up 122 to the Raptors. They gave up 146 to Denver, which is an ABA score, which is just totally embarrassing.
Yeah, I think that was the most they've ever given up as a franchise.
I mean, it was absolutely embarrassing. Okay, and then again, 65 to Oklahoma City the other night in the first half. Now they came back, tightened up the defense after in the second half. Boogie Cousins goes out with the elbow on the flagrant 2, and then the team started playing together. Anthony Davis started getting the basketball. They started doing the extra, looking for the extra pass. This team has given up 100 points in every game this season, but two. This team is not playing defense. Even though they're one of the top teams in terms of assists, they're not smart when they pass the ball. They're lazy passers. They don't really put a lot of oomph in the pass when they're trying to get into the interior.
They don't beat teams with winning records.
And they haven't consistently. And I'll say this: when you look at Boogie Cousins right now, he really slows the game down for this team. He gets the ball, methodical at the top of the key, takes the long 3, or he wants to, again, bowling ball down the lane. They've got to get the ball into Rondo, and they've got to get more touches for Anthony Davis. And somehow, some way, they got to find a little pride here and start playing some defense. Again, this stretch right here of 11 games is one of the more difficult stretches in the early part of the season because they're playing teams with winning records.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, and the performance against Oklahoma City was encouraging because that's a good team.
Yep.
They finally beat. It was good to see a
Still
fire
the losing
lit
record, 1 under 500.
Right, but to have the fire lit under them, hopefully it doesn't take a Cousins ejection to get that kind of fire out of them on a regular basis.
They actually played better with, look, I'm not saying that Boogie doesn't deserve to be on the court. He's one of the best players at his position, but they played a better brand of basketball when he wasn't on the floor, and they don't utilize the strength of having the 2 7-footers in the paint. Yeah. They don't put them down low.
Yeah, well, I don't get that either. That's the weirdest thing.
Well, that's the two things to me are they have to find a way to utilize the presence of those two big guys to improve their defense. And Rondo has to take charge of this offense and get some sort of organization and consistency. At times, they have moved the ball better when Rondo's on the court.
There's no doubt.
And now they've moved Etuan Moore ahead of Cunningham in the starting lineup, which is a risk-reward type of thing. So we'll see how it goes. But that's one of the real keys to me is they are better on offense, more organized on offense when Rondo's in the game. He's the whole key to how good that
Rondo
offense
doesn't need to be a star. He doesn't even need to be the third scorer. Rondo needs to be the quarterback and the leader of the team. He doesn't have to be the star.
Yes.
That's Anthony Davis. He's the number 1 guy. Cousins is number 2. But Rondo needs to play the point guard position. And,
going back and looking at last season and this season and the dramatic change that we saw on the defensive side of the ball with Darren Erman coming in, the loss of Solomon Hill really looms large for this team right now. They don't have they are at a deficit when they have to match up against big guards. They don't have that stopper on the defensive end. Hill has been missed.
No question. He's their best perimeter defender. And there's no timetable. I think they're hopeful of getting him back during the second half of the season, but there's no timetable at this point. He's a long way away, and it'll take him a while to get back in shape. So you have to look at this team without him for right now. And that's a big loss. And when they go with Moore in the starting lineup, that gives them a smaller starting lineup and creates potential defensive problems depending on the matchup.
True.
Yep.
So a lot of problems to sort out on the defensive end, but with those two big guys, it just seems to me they should be able to play good defense, better defense than we've seen in some of these games of late. And a lot of that just has to be effort.
Effort. It's what it comes down to, Corey. Effort.
Penetrating the paint for the opposition should be a no-no. And right now it's not at all.
No, it's Olay.
Cousins, who's big, they're both sort of finesse big guys. I don't think anyone looks at them as physically intimidating. Look, Anthony Davis.
Well, Westbrook might think Cousins is physically intimidating.
Right.
Well, yeah. Of the elbow.
Right, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, like, Anthony Davis is a dominator, shot blocker, rebounder, an incredible presence, an athlete, but they're not physical. Or maybe not physical like they should be.
Right. Well, and that's been the big drawback to this. Offensively, they can score. They're just not stopping players.
Yep.
And to me, offensive rebound, defense, that is about effort, and they haven't put the effort out thus far. Corey Johnson, Les East, thanks so much for being on the panel tonight here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Happy Thanksgiving to both of you.
Thanks
Eric.
Happy
you
Thanksgiving.
too.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also, you catch us on Cox 130. That is 10 o'clock on Thursday nights. Also, 2 a.m. on Saturday mornings. And we're statewide every Friday night on Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 p.m. Catch me on the radio, 990 a.m. WGSO. That's weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. You can also take the show with you anywhere by downloading the TuneIn Radio app, which is a free download for your smartphone or tablet. Every single episode of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to our guests, Les East and also Corey Johnson. Also the WLE production staff, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Kenny Juneau, and my director, William Hill. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com.